Hey everyone, this is the Cajun Gaming Guild, and today we are going to be working on a little tool that I created when I started coding. Why I created this tool is because I found that through trial and error and learning all this coding stuff that sometimes you might want to know where your XY values are, specifically pinpointed. I'll give you examples after we do this little tool. But in a nutshell, my menus now when I make games are usually just one sprite. I'll make one sprite, it'll pop up a menu box, and I actually have one made that I'm going to show you here in a little bit. And on that box, I might have an icon of, let's say, a sword. And then on the right, I have where you can buy the sword. It's a button, but at the button, all that is just a picture that I drew into the sprite. And when you click that specific area, it will fire off the code based on where your mouse pointer is. So in order to figure out where your mouse pointer is, well, you have to know what the X, Y positions are in exact locations. And then you basically are going to create code that shows the program where you mean when you're hovering in a specific box. It'll know where you're at. And I'll explain that in greater detail in another video, but I will explain it a tiny bit here at the end of this clip. So basically what we're going to do is, it's called an XY finder. And when I hit my Y key, it's going to pop up in the right hand corner, okay? And wherever my mouse pointer is, Y is up and down. So wherever my mouse pointer is showing me the Y value of the very tip of my pointer. All right. So if I was trying to find out, let's say, what the Y value of this bubble, all right, I would go right to the top of it and it's 177. The bottom of it would be, let's say, 141-ish, all right? So, and then you can shut that off and you can press X, and now you have the X value based on where your mouse pointer is. And it only goes to minus 240 and plus 240 because that's where the edge of the screen ends, okay? So, again, why is this tool important? Well, I feel like it's important. I'm going to show you now before we actually make the tool. But I came up with this little, I just drew something on a background. I don't usually use backgrounds, but for this example, I figured this would be perfect. So when I press 1, it's going to pop up my menu. Okay, all this is the background. It's not really anything that you can put much code into, but for the example that I'm going to show you, this will work. So let's say I wanted to buy a heart for 6 coins, and this is the button I actually had to click on. Well, in order to determine what area this is in, I would have to know the X and Y values of every edge of this box. And then I would program that code in an if-then-else statement. So if my X value was bigger than 170 minus 172 and smaller than minus 45, let's say. And also, so you have an AND statement there, and it's bigger than 107, minus 105 or minus 107, then, and smaller than the top part, that's the Y value, then we're all good. When you click here, it would know that that's exactly where I'm trying to click, and it would open or fire off the code. So if, like, let's just say this was to open something, but this isn't, this would be, let's say, to buy a heart for 6 coins. It would subtract the 6 coins, give me the heart, and away I go. All right. So this XY value thing is really, really handy for that, because sometimes you're going to want to know, well, I wonder where this is exactly on the XY grid. Well, you hit the X button, you hit the Y button, whatever you want, and it hides really well. Once it's off, it's off. You don't see it running at all in the background, but it is there. Okay. So it's an awesome little tool, something I created. Like I say, the kids that I show coding to use it. I made them all make one for their little projects. So I'm going to show you how to make one of these today. All right. So first off, we are going to get rid of the background. And I'm going to delete this XY finder. At this point, I want you to make a new sprite. Okay, I'm going to do this from scratch, like I say. Make a new sprite, go to the code, and then we're going to begin. You are going to need a when Y is pressed key. Okay, I'm not going to put a picture. There's no point in putting a picture because I don't want to be able to see anything on my screen other than the little say now button that we're going to implement into the code in a little bit. So we're going to go to events. We're going to drag a when space key is pressed because that's where you're going to find the Y key. We're going to go all the way down here. We'll click on Y. And then we are going to bring out a if then else statement. Okay. And from this point on, we're going to bring out an operator that says equals. And I'll explain what all of this stuff is going to do in a minute once we get it almost all set up here. Last but not least, we're going to have to make two variables, okay? I'm only going to do one now, and all I'm going to do is basically just copy it for the second one after, but we'll make both the variables now. So what I want to make is basically a Boolean check, all right? A true or false check for if my Y key is being pressed or my X key is being checked. So I'm going to call it Y check for all sprites. I could put it for this sprite, it would probably be fine, but I'm not going to. And I'm going to call the other one X check. Okay. So X and Y check are now variables that you can see up here, and I'll just leave them up here for now. And I am going to drag, since we're doing Y, well, we want it to check. Is Y on? Okay. So is Y on? If Y is on, it should equal to 1. That's how I do things. 0 is off, and 1 is on. So this is not checking to see whether it's on, it's checking to see whether it is off. Because at the start of the game, or whatever it's going to be hiding. You don't want it on right away. You only want it on whenever you need it on. So what I've created here, and what I'm going to finish creating, is basically a toggle, like a light switch, okay? And what's going to happen is you're going to set the Y check variable that you just created either to on or off. So right off the bat, if it's off, well, guess what you want to do? You want to turn it on. All right, if you press the Y key, you want to turn it on. That's why you press the Y key. But if it is off, if it is already on, when you press this Y key again, well, you want to shut it off, so which will toggle off to the other option that you've done. All right, so now when I press the Y key, it's going to be on. So let's right now see it's on. And if I press it again, it's off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. And that's your light switch, basically, by pressing the Y key. So again, to do the X, instead of redoing all that code, I'm just going to duplicate it, right click and duplicate. I'm going to change when the X key is pressed. I'm going to now change this to the X check, and I'm going to change this to the X check and this to the X check. All I did was right click on this, by the way, if you weren't sure what I did there. And everything now should be X whenever the X key is pressed. All right. It should turn on, off, on, off, on, off. Okay. So now it works just how we want it. So now for the visualization of this, like what are you going to see? What graphics are you going to see? So the best thing that you could do is put a think or say, and I use the think one, okay? I just like that one better. Think the value that I want to pop on my screen for so many seconds, and that way there just disappears, all right? And the way I have it set up, though, it'll probably not disappear until, it's not that it probably won't, it just won't disappear until you actually press the Y key and shut it off again, okay? It's set to update, and I will explain that as I go. So again, you're going to go to event, you're going to pull out another when, why, or you can just right click here, duplicate this if you don't want to redo all that stuff. And actually I'm going to do that. I'm just going to duplicate it. And from here, actually we're just going to leave that right there. And what we're going to do now is, well, if Y check is equal to 1, so if it's on, okay, we want it to do something. We don't want to do this anymore because that was in the first part. What we want it to do is first go to where we want it to appear, where we want the graphic to appear. All right. So I use positive 150 x and positive 150 y, which is up in the top right corner. All right. I then say, okay, if there's a graphic up in the top right corner though, that I might have put there in the UI or whatever, some hearts maybe, who knows what's up there in your game, and you want to make sure that it's on top of that graphic. So what you do next is you're going to go to the front layer, all right? And then after this, you need to actually do the thinking, all right? Which is think whatever for so many seconds. So you're going to put that in next. And what do you guys think I want to think about? Well, I want to know, since this is the Y key, I want to think what the mouse Y position is for so many seconds. But here's the problem, and I'm going to explain this to you now. So another thing that I forgot to do, but I should have, is you want this to be constantly running, a forever loop. The top part you do not, because it's a light switch and you don't want it toggling on, off, on, off, on, off a million times. You just want, when you press the button, it works. When you press the button again, it shuts it off. That's it. But this part, once it's on, you want it to constantly be updating as you move your mouse around. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little error that I found. All right, and instead of just fixing the problem, I want to show you the error so that if you make an error like this, you'll know how to fix it. One other thing before we do this, I just realized that when I did this, I actually had two separate if statements. I didn't have an if then else. It probably would work just fine if you did it that way, but this is the way I created it, so I want to replicate it exactly because it works perfectly this way. You're going to duplicate this and you're going to pull this down here and you're going to do this. Okay? Again, an if then else statement actually probably would work just fine. And to be honest, when I do the Y one here in a second, I'm going to do that just to make sure that it does work, just to show you that I believe that it would. Okay, so if Y is equal to 1, do this. If it's not, which should be the else, so it should work perfectly if you did the if then and else statement, then I want you to shut this down. All right, I want you to stop this. So that would be in the stop, not stop all, but stop this script. All right. So that's perfectly fine. So now if we try this, I'm going to show you the error. So we're going to push that on. We're going to push the Y key. Now you'll notice, see how slowly my number is updating? It's crazy, eh? It's like I'm moving around. This is like crap. This is junk. This is just not going to do. All right. So why this is doing this is because it's waiting. It's holding the value there for 2 seconds every time it updates. Well, you don't need to have it at that high of a place. I usually change this to 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, something like that. So now you'll see quite a difference. It basically updates instantly now. All right. And that's what you want to do. So it's a lot smoother. It's a lot better. And so that was the error I was going to tell you about. So some people might leave that, oh, I want to see it for longer. Well, if you see it for longer, if you're moving your mouse around, it's not going to update quick. So it's going to cause you problems. All right. So that's that part. So for the Y, we're going to copy this. And again, though, I want to try the other code. So we're going to throw this away. And I'm going to put an if then else statement just to show you that I believe 100% that it's going to work. When I made this was one of the very first projects I made. So I just realized how old the code is. I should have used an if then else statement then, but I didn't. And you can tell. So now I'm going to repair that. And I'm going to show you guys how I repair it. So we will pull all this here into there. And instead, we're going to, oh, you can't right click on that one. So I actually have to pull in the right one, the mouse X position for point 1. then we can just do this. That's it. Because if x check is not equal to 1, well, it's only going to be 0. There's only 2 different options that it can be. Okay? So, oh, shoot. I guess I should duplicate it because I do need it over here. All right. So we're going to go ahead and try this out now. All right. So we're going to hit that button. We're going to press Y. We can see that it's working fine. Now we'll hit the X. And like I said, I'm relatively sure it's going to work. And it did. Perfect. So if then else works just fine. Like I say, it was probably just old code of mine. And yeah, so now I showed you that. Again, you can repair stuff. You can make things better than the first time you've done it, right? So that's why the more games you make in Scratch, the more things you make, the more tools like this that you make, the better off you're going to get at it. You're going to figure out that there's an easier way to do it. All right. You may know easier ways of, if you've watched some of my previous videos, to do things that I've done. And if you did, send me a comment. I'd love to know how you did it better because it'll make my life easier in the future. All right. So this is how this tool works. X and Y Finder. I hope it helped you guys. And if you guys wouldn't mind liking and subscribing down below, that would be awesome. I could really appreciate your support. And I thank you very, very much for watching. Later.